If I need to dig up weeds in my backyard, I could use a spade and that could be helpful. But if I have a lot of weeds, I might want to use a shovel. And then if I'm being paid to do that work, then I need to do it within a specific amount of time. So I don't want to use like a spoon or a spade to dig all those up. I need to use a shovel. I may need to use a backhoe. So that's where the limitation of the technology being applied to the problem is critically important.
Welcome to the People in Legal podcast. This is the Law and Beyond show where we explore everything there is in the expanding legal universe. That is law, technology and compliance, education and academia. And I'm your host, Chantal McNaught. I'm a PhD researcher researching how lawyers navigate the conflicts between law as a profession and law as a business. I also author the fully innovative luxury lawyer LinkedIn newsletter, and most recently, co-founder of 43 Below, where we help professionals with their AI literacy and fluency. And I'm so excited to introduce Max Scott on the show. Max Scott is CTO and co-founder of Strat Alliance Global, and he is globally recognized as a leader in responsible AI and emerging technology governance. As the CTO and co-founder of Strat Alliance Global, Max assists professional services firms with AI procurement, frontier innovation, and AI systems integration. Max brings deep expertise in deploying high-risk AI systems across sectors and borders. At Microsoft's Office of Responsible AI, Max led global teams to develop and deploy governance frameworks and co-chaired the UNESCO Business Council for the Ethics of AI. So we clearly have a lot to talk about today. Prior to his time at Microsoft, Max served as a technology policy advisor at the US Department of State, representing the US positions on AI and emerging technologies throughout the Indo-Pacific region, as well as the EU, ASEAN, and the G20. Welcome to the show, Max.
Glad to be here.
Oh, I am so excited to share our conversations with the audience as we explore really like the heavy stuff that's involved when it comes to AI, the gravity of responsible and ethical AI, particularly for legal practices, because I understand that that's where you have been focusing your efforts recently with Strat Alliance Global. And you have been very outspoken about how much AI development is not being done responsibly. From your perspective, where are the law firms most exposed today? And where do you think that those risks are often misunderstood or overstated?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the legal profession is one in which AI can provide a lot of benefits, but can also present some pretty unique challenges because AI innovation, as you know, is really targeted at the knowledge worker and really affecting how knowledge work and how judgment is applied to solving various problems. And with this in mind, I think the biggest risk and the biggest challenge for professional services is really just the hype. I think what a lot of people underestimate is for typical software design, like when they designed Word or they designed a software product. With Word, they wanted to be able to digitize the process of typing something. They understood the problem and then they built a solution around solving that problem. But a lot of what's being presented in AI are solutions that are then searching for a problem. So for example, we know a chatbot is a really good thing that could be used by customer service. So let's apply it in every possible customer service incident and see what happens. Yeah, and when that happens, it presents a lot of novel risk because you have people who are building AI-driven solutions that are not purpose-built to solving specific problems. And then that problem is magnified even more in a field like the law, where the misallocation of an AI solution or an AI solution having a reliability or safety issue is magnified because it can be even more consequential given that it's in the legal space. So a lot of law firms are being pushed on, I need to adopt AI, I need to do AI, or AI is going to destroy my business, or AI, all of these different questions about how AI is going to affect them in the problem. but they are buying solutions that are not purpose built for the work that they are doing. And I think going back to basics and understanding the problems that you're trying to solve and understanding the risks, how they apply to your unique business context, is the best way to navigate risk, especially in the legal space, first and foremost.
Wow. So really a lot of it's got to do with a procurement issue that law firms are buying things off the shelf out of fear of missing out, the old FOMO. Have you seen any sort of issues with that out in the open? Can you share any kind of case studies on what you have seen it go? I actually don't want to talk about like the real bad cases of it going like really, really wrong. And I know we've had previous conversations off air around case law, but I actually had a thought about what about just mediocre stuff, like where the results are mediocrity. Is there any kind of examples you have in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's almost a fundamental misunderstanding of the limitations of the technology, and that's critically important in the legal space. So, but this is not a problem that's just tuned to AI or the legal space. For example, if I need to dig up weeds in my backyard, I could use a spade, and that could be helpful. But if I have a lot of weeds, I might want to use a shovel. And then if I'm being paid to do that work, then I need to do it within a specific amount of time. So I don't want to use like a spoon or a spade to dig all those up. I need to use a shovel. I may need to use a backhoe. So that's where the limitation of the technology being applied to the problem is critically important. And how this plays out in AI is actually quite common when you think about ChatGPT or you think about these general purpose technologies. They are prone to hallucination. They are prone to errors. They're prone to misjudgment. And a lot of lawyers think, oh, well, this is a sophisticated AI technology. It's going to be right. It's smarter than me. It knows all of these things.
Yeah.
I don't need to check it. So then they will then use these technologies to ask really important, impactful questions about case law. And the answer comes out and it's really, really, it sounds right. It sounds good. But they're kind of misunderstanding the limitations of the technology and making decisions based on that misunderstanding, which puts them in a lot of risk.
Yeah, and so it's at best it's mediocre, not using a shovel when you're using a spade. But at worst though, there are some examples of real harm, real reputational damage that Australian lawyers, but of course this is like global as well. There's lots of US, there's a Canada case, the Allende case as well is in the High Court of the UK is a really great one for any lawyer to read wherever you are in the world where you're listening. But do you have any like prime examples you want to point some of our listeners to?
Sure. I think last year there were over 400 cases of an AI system being used in court and then generating a false citation in the US. And in Australia, I've been able to identify more than 20 in just a few months last year alone. One that comes to mind is JNE24 versus Minister of Immigration and Citizenship, which occurred in August of 2025. And in that case, a lawyer used Claude and Microsoft Copilot in coming up with their analysis. And the submission that they sent to the court contained a lot of fabricated or misrepresented case law. So the court ended up issuing a personal cost order and referred the matter to the bar, which ended up being incredibly consequential for the lawyer. And that type of thing is not something that just happens in Australia. It seems to be happening more and more in the US and more overseas as well.
I really like the JNE judgment because Judge Gerard really puts this into perspective that all lawyers using AI or just in general lawyering need to remember. It is, and this is, I'm quoting from paragraph 34, it is not sufficient to simply check that the cases cited were not fictitious. What is expected from legal practitioners as part of their duty to the court and to their client is that those cases, if they do exist, are reviewed to ensure they are authority for the principle the lawyer wishes to rely upon, have not subsequently been overturned or distinguished by a higher court, and are considered in respect of how and why those principles are relevant to the factual matrix of the case in which they intend to advance that proposition. Legal principles are not simply slogans that can be affixed to submissions without context or analysis. And I really, really like that quote because it goes to the heart of a lot of the concerns, I think, as well, that lawyers have around generative AI and the whole job question. And I really do, I'm going to ask about the whole anxiety thing in a moment. But that whole like legal principles requiring context and analysis is the duty of the lawyer. It is what lawyers and attorneys in the US, everyone who's licensed to be a lawyer is licensed for legal reasoning, and it cannot be delegated to AI. So exactly. It's a really, really powerful judgment. It's not a long one. And so highly recommend. That's JNE24 and the Minister of Immigration and Citizenship. I'll pop the correct citation in the show notes. So, on that whole anxiety point and, AI replacing the whole legal judgment and undermining professional identity, based on your work with firms, what concerns do you think are most valid and what probably need a bit of a reframe?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of anxiety around just the replacement concept, not just in law, but in other fields. But in law, it's the idea that, okay, here's a technology that can do what looks like reasoning. It's really prediction, but it looks like reasoning and it seems to do it well. So people are concerned that system is going to ultimately be able to replace human judgment. But I think that the issue with that and the idea that the role of the lawyer entirely can be replaced is kind of cheapens the idea of what's happening in judgment and in reasoning. For example, and I could talk about this all day, so I won't, but scientists actually don't know fully what intelligence is, period. Either from a cognitive point of view or from a behavioral point of view. There's no set definition. And that's why
it's a deeply philosophical question.
It's a deeply philosophical question, and that's why it's so difficult to determine whether one person is smarter than another. And even with things like IQ scores, that measures things like general intelligence, but it doesn't measure creativity. It doesn't measure social skills. It doesn't measure a lot of what we colloquially would understand to be intelligence. So I could go on that. So I'll try to stay about it. But the important point to think about is that, in my view, these AI systems, what they are executing on, they're predictive in nature. They are predicting. They understand the input, and because of the input, they are able to reference and assess through their index what they predict the answer is. That's very different from the way human cognition works. And it's very important when you think about judgment, which is what a lawyer charges for. They charge for their judgment and their analysis. They don't charge for their prediction. And I'll give just one other example about this. So weather people, for example, they predict what weather is going to look like, but you don't fully rely on no one fully relies on what a weather person is going to say because they understand.
You should look outside and make your determination whether you're bringing the umbrella or not.
Yeah. Or let's say you live in a particular area where the weather is really strange, like you're high up in a mountain or you're in a rainforest, and you know that it typically rains around 3 p.m. and then it ends 30 minutes later. AI systems that are these, especially the general purpose ones that are not trained to solve specific problems, are not good at that type of reasoning. That's very human focused cognition. And in the legal space, this plays out by lawyers who have a ton of experience and they know about their area of the law and they know about their jurisdictional codes. They can draw these connections that AI systems can't. So they'll think about, this case that happened 50 years ago. And it's completely unrelated. It's about seals off the coast of, New Zealand. Who knows? and they can make that connection to a very, very different case. That's where the human level inference is happening. And that's extremely difficult for an AI system to do. That's why these AI systems struggle to generate things that are fully new or new ideas. And this is where, going back to your question and away from my tangent about intelligence, this is why I think the role of the lawyer is going to be extremely hard to replace. And the role of the AI system is going to be one that can support the role of the lawyer, because you can better draw connections. It can get your mind thinking about issues, and then you can think about, oh yeah, this kind of reminds me about what happened in this other case I did many, many years ago. But replacing that human judgment is going to be very, very difficult to do for an AI system, and certainly in the way AI systems work now. So that's one that I'm less afraid about, or that I think lawyers can maybe take pause when they see a lot of concern around that. Now, something that's going to be incredibly disruptive, I think, in relation to AI systems is the whole legal business model, which is drawn into this hourly concept. What AI systems are really good at doing is they can take an output, they transform it into they take an input, they transform it into a really great output. So for a lot of low margin, high volume work that happens in the legal space, there's a lot of opportunity for automation and innovation as it relates to AI systems that would typically be done on an hourly basis. So I think if I was in a law firm right now and I was a lawyer, that would be the thing I would be thinking the most about, is how can my business model adopt to the innovation that's happening, and where can I maximize the value of my human judgment while also maximizing the value of being able to output a lot more easier to attain outcomes in order to maximize the value of my clients. That's an area where I think a lot of transformation is very likely to occur, and that's one where I think a lot of lawyers are rightly concerned about as they think about what the legal space looks like in the future.
Now for recruitment trends from Jen Little at InSource.
So the insights data is indicative and based off publicly available information at the time. But looking at the last 12 months in terms of lawyer movement, we're shining a light on Sydney. So most of the hiring in Australia happened within the New South Wales market. Over 4,000 lawyers moved roles within New South Wales in the last 12 months. And this was followed by Victoria with over 3,000 lawyer moves, and Queensland with over 1,800 lawyer moves, and then Western Australia. And then there was a bit of a gap where the other smaller states followed. So most of the hires in New South Wales had less than 5 years PAE. And most of the hires, over 3,000 of the 4,000 lawyers, moved locally within New South Wales, and more specifically within the Sydney market. In firms with a lawyer headcount of 5+, the most hiring happened in firms at the mid-market level with lawyer headcount of 100 to 200 lawyers. Litigation and corporate commercial were the largest areas of growth in the Australia market in the last 12 months. The parting of Mallesons from King & Wood made Mallesons the largest employer of lawyers in the last 12 months across every state that they have offices in within Australia.
That was Legal Recruitment Insights by InSource Recruitment. I really appreciate this really considered answer, Max, because, we're not afraid to get a little bit philosophical, a little bit deep on the show. And where the light and shade is so much about, it's not that much of a concern to be anxious around the identity point, like what jobs will there be for lawyers in the future. That's kind of where the human judgment that you're referring to, the fact that we as humanity have been unable to really pinpoint exactly what intelligence is. But what we do know around AI systems is that they're not the same as human. They're just very good mimicry machines. And that whole piece around value, and it's really a common conversation that I'm having as well with a lot of firms. And the law societies across Australia's jurisdictions, as well as in New Zealand too, are really asking these questions about how do we determine what value is, And I've said this before on the show, because it goes to the whole unique purpose of like law as a business aspect, that legal services are what's called a credence good. And a credence good is got nothing to do with Creedence Clearwater Revival, although that's kind of how I remember what it's called. But it's a term that was developed. It's a great band. Bad Moon Rising, perfect for this day and age, right? Yeah. And the music aside, the credence good is a term that economists have created to describe services where there's this asymmetry between the service provider and the consumer or the purchaser. And so there's this really fascinating paper that compares lawyers to computer repair shops. Because when your laptop breaks and you need to go get it repaired, and you go to the computer repair place and they quote you for more than you paid for the laptop, and you wonder, but what needs to be fixed? Like, what's the value? How did you arrive to that amount? And that's the same when it comes to legal services for many consumers. And it's gotten to the point where I've heard on the grapevine, so I haven't actually checked this, so please, I invite listeners to fact check this, but allegedly Meta are asking their panel lawyers to send them the bills, and then the Meta team are actually going through the billing descriptions of all of the time entries and highlighting the tasks that could be delegated to AI. So there in itself is a really practical approach to, well, what inherently does have value and what doesn't, because there's going to be more information out of what they don't underline or they don't highlight, because that says to them at least, what the value of their panel lawyers are giving them. And that whole reshaping how work is done is I think a really exciting time that
absolutely,
hopefully, lawyers shouldn't be too afraid. You don't want to be catatonic about it, but it is something to think about. It's like, oh, maybe I should ask my client what they think they're buying from me. And it's a question that lawyers really don't like to ask, because we feel as if we've gone to law school, we know how to interpret and apply. It's not just mere slogans. But that might not necessarily be the understanding of our clients. And our clients just go, well, I can't do this transaction without a lawyer, because my understanding of how all the law operates is that I need your license to stamp these papers to do this transaction. That's a very different sort of situation, and how you adapt to that is going to be really interesting. Changing tack now, you've emphasised that the benefits and risks of AI are shaped geographically, on previous podcasts that you've been on. And I wanted to know how you believe that Australian law firms should be thinking about AI adoption differently in comparison to other places in the world, like the US or European firms.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think most people's exposure to AI systems right now is related to general purpose style AI systems like ChatGPT or Claude. And these are systems that are trained, they basically scrape the internet. They're trained on mass amounts of data. And based on those mass amounts of data, they can give convincing answers to generalized questions. But the problem, it starts to get complicated when you think about very specific, very contextual, very localized issues. This is where these models struggle, because they know a little bit, they have a tendency to know a little bit about everything, but not a lot about anything in particular. And in addition to that, many models are being developed primarily in Western, wealthier economies like the US and Europe. And these models are being trained on mass amounts of data that are obtainable in those markets. So US developed models, for example, may be trained on data sets that have been gathered by, gathered using US citizens. But then when you take that data that's in that model that's been trained on data from US citizens and you apply it in Cambodia, it doesn't work, or the demographics are so different, the location is so different, the problems are so different, the culture is so different, it doesn't work. And this is where you end up with so many problems on these models as it relates to bias and lack of inclusion, is because they are limited in the way that they are trained. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is the flip side of that is actually quite appealing, because there are the diversity of the world can create a ton of value, because some places are good at particular things and much better at those things than other places. And you can take that data that's learned in those regions and you can apply it to solve problems globally. A good example of this is climate change. In places like Micronesia or Palau, climate change is the issue. That is the issue.
It's a lived reality for them.
It's a lived reality, and they have more data on climate change than most, if not all, places in the world, because it's existential for them. So when they train models on their climate data, they have a level of sophistication that they can present from those models that other regions of the world can't, because they have the data that understands that problem in their unique context. In Australia, there's a lot of markets and economies of scale that are found nowhere else in the world. A good example of that is definitely mining. Australia has a longer history of mining and more data related to mining than almost anywhere else in the world. Whenever Australia is ready to, build the world's most sophisticated AI mining model, or any models that are related to that data, they can do so because they have that as a resource and as an asset. And so when I think about where the opportunities and the big economic and innovation opportunities are, I think it's the more exciting ones are not about the large scale general purpose models that try and do everything. They're about the smaller scale, focused problem solving AI systems that are tailored towards what each place can do best and where they have unique advantages and unique assets that make them such to where they can be a global leader on particular issues.
That is incredibly important to really process and take in, because there is a lot of work going on in Australia, in particularly out of the University of Technology in Sydney. Previously had a guest, Mona Chiha, who is spearheading a small language model specifically on the litigation funding and that whole world of legislation and case law around costs and things. So that is really great and reassuring to hear. But it also means that there's this really untapped opportunity for further innovation and development in this space, that I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation with you as that further develops. And I know that you work a lot with law firms in this part of the world. Strat Alliance Global come in and help with the frameworks and the education piece around the risk. What does the day-to-day good look like for those Australian firms that you're working with?
Yeah, so I mean, typically when I come and speak to a professional services firm, they are feeling like they are behind. They are worried that their work is going to get replaced or be just not existing in several years. They feel like they have to buy AI systems either because they need to be seen as having AI systems, or because if they don't, then their competitors will have them. So they feel like they need to catch up. And they're buying these AI systems, again, as solutions without a specific problem. So then they're applying these solutions to everything they do, and it doesn't have a good fit. So that's sort of the problem space they end up having. And what we do is we take them back to first principles. What is most important to you? What types of risks are you comfortable with versus ones that you are less comfortable with? And what type of reputation do you want to have as it relates to AI? If you understand foundationally where you want to go, then you know the problem you're trying to solve, and you can set criteria and you can build governance around, this is the type of solution that works for me. This is the type of reliability I'm comfortable with versus not comfortable with. This is the type of innovation I'm happy to do myself versus something that I might buy. And you're able to navigate all of this stuff that is otherwise extremely anxiety provoking, with just simple yes or no questions. So you know, like, this works for me versus this doesn't, because it's written down. You have a whole governance around it.
Those questions though aren't easy. Like, they're very, very introspective. They require a really robust level of self-awareness. Do you have any tips for how to sort of unlock a bit of that, cognitive readiness to embark on those questions from the outset to really make good use of the process that you take those firms on that journey?
Yeah, this is where the therapy part of the work comes in.
Yes.
Because it's sort of, I think it's just really important to understand what it is exactly that you're afraid of. And a lot of places, they don't want to be on the Sydney Morning Herald saying that they did something.
Or AFR.
Or AFR. They don't want to have the whole story about, we talked earlier about the lawyer. They don't want that story to be about them. So, but if you understand that's the outcome you're seeking to avoid, you can deconstruct that and you can say, all right, well, what are the things that I need to do to not do that? And then what does the flip side of that look like? How do I want other people to talk about me? How do I want other people to think about me in my space? And if you can answer those types of questions, then you can build a foundation from there and make it easier for the rest of your firm to feel comfortable embracing the innovation while also understanding its risks and making responsible decisions about it. But I think, to your question, the most important thing about it is, I think everybody needs to know that it's okay to feel anxious about AI, and it's okay to be worried about these things. And it is important to know that risks are real and that there are real things to worry about there. I think a lot of people, when they talk about these things, they're either put down and been like, oh, you worry too much, whatever. There's either that response, or it's we're doomed. so I think neither of those perspectives are helpful. I think we've been through large industrial style changes before. We've been through large knowledge changes before. We've been through digital transformations before. There's a time and tested methodology for getting through these things. And I think just understanding that there are both challenges and opportunities, and embracing that is a good place for any firm to start. And to just, like, when you do that inward look, just realize that where you are is fine and is normal and is something that everyone is facing all around the world at this moment. So it's okay to feel the way that you feel.
We're all doing our best.
We're all doing our best. Everyone's doing their best.
It's so important to do it together, and not like it is. Like, I find that I struggle with this as well. It's especially through like embarrassment or shame around, it's easy to want to isolate, but really what's going to give us strength is to connect and realize that that thing that I'm struggling with is what everybody else is struggling with. Maybe as a team, maybe as a profession, maybe as humanity, we can kind of work this out together. Yeah. I really like that piece. Thanks, Max. And for those who have made it this far, congratulations. We are going to find out a little bit more about our special guest here, Max, and I've got these conversation cards. So something that we can't prepare for because they're quite literally random, although I can't really shuffle very well.
There you go.
Here we go.
Predictive. It's hard to predict these things. So.
Hard to predict. Oh, I think this one's a little bit up your alley. Okay. What invention do you think the world needs?
Invention the world needs. Oh, God. Okay. No, I need to give a good answer for this. This is so good. This is a really good question. Okay, so I've been trying to train an agent, and it's neither important to me enough to really spend the time to do this, nor is it valuable enough for me to really spend the time to do this, but I really want an agent that can just reach out to me randomly and just say nice things to me. That would be great. I think everyone would
an affirmation
benefit from that.
agent.
Just affirmations. It like knows me, and it's just like, you're really good at skiing. The other day you went skiing. I know you did great. I wanted to do stuff like that, and I want someone to make that and then give it to me because I think it would be great. I think everyone would like that.
That's so lovely. There's a little bit of reassurance in your day.
Yeah.
You're doing great. Well, Max, you've done a fantastic interview coming onto the show. You're really insightful. You have a lot of knowledge, and you are incredible at being able to share it in such an accessible way. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been so great to chat with you and to join for this.